Hello everybody, I'm continuing my look at the recent Marvel Legends Secret Wars wave, and today I'm going to be looking at the first of only 2 villains in this wave of 6 figures, and it is actually the debut of this character in the Marvel Legends line. It is the Beyonder. So as ever, let's kick off by taking a look at the packaging. Now we know what to expect if you've seen my previous videos in this series so far, because the card art is exactly the same as what we've seen previously. Of course, it is that retro card, it is replicating what we got all those years ago, back in the early 80s. Amazing to think. We're celebrating the 40th anniversary. Anyway, this looks fantastic. I think it looks really good. I think it's really eye-catching. I love the artwork on this, and I think it looks great on display. If we flip it and look at the reverse, we have some newly commissioned artwork of the Beyonder here. We have a little bit of bio about the character, and then we see the other figures available in this wave, which of course is very consistent with what we used to get with the original toy line, as are the instructions that we see underneath about how to flip over the holographic image within the shield the figure comes with. And the figure itself is a little bit bland, in all honesty. A lot of that is down to the fact that there's really very limited washes or paint on this figure to really catch the eye, I suppose. The head sculpt, for what it's worth, is pretty good. I think they've done a good job of capturing the likeness of the villain as we see him in Secret Wars. I think there's a fair amount of paint apps going on here to make this quite an interesting sculpt, and there's a good expression on the face there, which is off to a really good start. However, when we look at the rest of the figure, although a lot of this looks to be fresh and original, certainly that upper jacket there showing a little bit of the of his chest and whatnot, that looks to be new. But where the figure really falls down for me is the fact that, well, there's no washes over this, so it looks very plastic-like. And yeah, although the sculpting is there's lots of creases in the uniform, it is just white plastic, so it feels a little bit cheap, a little bit underwhelming. It's not particularly eye-catching, and it's a bit disappointing, I've got to be honest. And that kind of carries over to the articulation as well. Now, he does have a ball joint at the top of the neck, and his head can spin all the way around, and there's a good range of motion there when it comes to moving the head from side to side and nodding it up and down. He's got ball joints in the shoulders and the complementary bicep swivel, the double joints at the elbow, and the standard pin swivel at the wrist there as well. So far, so good. Where the figure starts to fall down for me, though, in terms of articulation, is around the articulation in the torso. He seems to have a ball joint in the middle of his waist, so he can move from side to side. He can kind of lean left and right in theory, except yeah, I found this really difficult to pose. It's one of those where you kind of move it in one direction, but it kind of automatically pivots right back to where it was. And you have to really, really force it to get it to move at all. And even then, it's not really to the extreme that you want it to be in. So I found this to be really disappointing because it feels like you can't really utilize it. He does have the standard ball joint in the hips. The legs will kick out to the side. There's the upper swivel in the thigh there as well. The leg will kick forwards. It'll kick backwards. And there's a double joint in the knee there, so that lower leg will kick all the way back, which is pretty good. And then he just has the ankle pivot. Sadly, there's no swivel at the top of the boot cut, so his foot will hinge forwards and backwards, and it will move from side to side. It will rock from side to side, but again, it just feels a little bit resistant and just kind of wants to default back to base for some reason. Sadly, he's also very light when it comes to accessories. All he comes with is an additional pair of open hands and what I think is a miniaturized, destroyed version of Battleworld. Now, I could be wrong on that. I'm not entirely sure what this prop relates to, in all honesty. And then, of course, he has his holographic shield. Now, this prop is a nice piece, I have to say. It looks pretty cool. There's a lot going on here, a lot of detail, lots of different colours, and it looks quite interesting. Some parts of it are translucent plastic, so the light catches it nicely, and it looks quite cool. It's definitely in sharp contrast to the whiteness of his costume. And when he holds it, yeah, I wouldn't say it's a nice snug grip by any stretch of the imagination. It really just rests in his hands, but it looks pretty cool, and I think this, is a nice display piece. And then, of course, we have his square shield, because the villains have silver square shields, whereas the heroes had the red circular discs. And, of course, the hologram works just the same. We see the Beyonder in his 2 guises, his human form and then his more native form there, which is more like pure light energy, which is kind of interesting and pretty cool. Okay, so final thoughts from me. I'm going to give this figure just 2 stars. For me, this is the turkey in the wave. Unfortunately, I think this is the weakest figure in this wave so far. It's nice to have a brand new character. I really applaud them for giving us the Beyonder at long last, and I appreciate he doesn't have the most exciting costume in the world. So this is always going to be a little bit of a challenge, I think, in terms of making him exciting and interesting as a figure. But I think they could have gone some way along towards that by actually just adding a little bit of a wash over this figure just to give it a little bit more detail, a bit more visual interest. As it is, it's nicely sculpted. It's just white plastic though, and for the most part there's just not a lot of interest going on visually with this character. He does have some interesting props. Well, he has an interesting prop, which is kind of cool. Given that I'm blanking what it actually is though, makes it a little bit meaningless. I'm sure someone in the comments will let me know what I've overlooked here, but nevertheless it is a nice prop, and I'm glad that he's finally got a release, because he didn't actually have one in the original toy line all those years ago, which is incredible to believe. The main villain didn't actually feature in the toy line. But I suppose the character is a difficult one to sell, really, because hasn't really have an exciting visual flair. And even now, all these years later, and all the figures I have in my collection, all the characters I have, he still doesn't really stand up, which is disappointing. Combined, of course, with the fact that he has some articulation issues in that torso joint, which I find really frustrating and slightly unforgivable. I can't get past that. So for me, unfortunately, yeah, I'm very disappointed by this release. This is one of the ones I was really excited by, and I have to say, yeah, I'm not a fan of this at all. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please do consider giving the video a like. That kind of thing really does help the channel out, and it allows me to keep making more content. And if you're interested in seeing more content, remember to hit subscribe, as there'll be plenty more videos coming soon.